Good afternoon, YouTube. It is your girl, Ayana, the Crafty Notary, back with another video. And today is going to be another Notary Basics 101. And today we're talking all about ID cards or identification and what can be accepted as a notary and how does that translate into the loan signing space. Because depending on different title companies or different lenders, there may be some different requirements as it relates to additional pieces of identification and how sometimes they can kind of trip you up with the ID. So today I will be referring to the Florida Notary Primer. And remember, if you don't have a Florida Notary Primer, you need to get one ASAP. You get it from the National Notary Association. This is your Bible for being a notary. And you can see I have mine marked for different things. So we are going to be going from the Florida Notary Primer, okay? And let's jump in. So on page 10 of the primer, it does state that a notary may identify a signer through any one of the identifications listed below. Now, identifying signers or identifying persons that you will be notarizing for is not limited to having ID. There is the ability to know someone personally or have a credible witness testify or verify that they know that person. And but we're not talking about those two today. We are only talking about when you are producing identification. Okay. Now, the primer says that your document, your identification document, has to be current, or if it is expired, it must have been issued within the past 5 years. Now, I don't know about any other states because people can use outside state identification. But in Florida, our IDs last for a pretty long time. They don't expire. Like mine doesn't expire until 2028. I believe it's 8 years because I got one last year. So I don't think it's ever possible in Florida that you will have an expired. Well, no, I guess it could be. If you lost an ID, got it reissued within the past 5 years and then it expired, I guess that's the only situation. Otherwise, I don't see a situation where your ID would have been issued within the past 5 years and it expired. But I do believe if you lose your ID or if you change your name, the issue date becomes the date you get the new ID. So that's the only scenario. And then the last piece is that it has to bear a serial number or an identifying number. So for your driver's license, that will be your driver's license number. If you have a passport, there is a passport number. All right. So what types of ID can you accept? You can take a Florida's driver's license that is issued by the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. You can also accept a U.S. passport that's issued by the U.S. Department of State, the blue one. You can also accept a foreign passport. Now, in this primer, it says, I don't know when this one was published, but in this primer, 2019, it says that the passport has to be stamped by USCIS. That is no longer the case. If you go to the National Notary Association and look up their laws and bulletins, this has been changed. So it no longer has to be stamped by the USCIS. We can now accept a foreign passport. You can also accept driver's license and non-driver's IDs issued by another state or territory. And I forgot to mention the Florida driver's license or ID. So it doesn't have to be a driver's license. It could be a state ID. You can also accept a U.S. military ID. You can also accept an inmate ID if it's issued on or after January 1st, 1991. You can also accept a sworn written statement from a sworn law enforcement officer explaining that an inmate's ID were confiscated upon incarceration. So those two really wouldn't apply to a loan signing per se. These seem like they fit if you're going into the jail situation to do a notarization. You can also accept a permanent resident card or a green card. And then last but not least, you can also accept a veteran health ID card that's issued by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. All right. Now, the second section in here says unacceptable identification documents would be, but are not limited to, birth certificates, social security cards, credit cards, and driver's license without photographs. So you see the theme here is that you need an identifying piece of information with a photograph. You need to be able to look at the photograph, look at the person, and know that they are one and the same. All right. And it also says, while one good identification document or card may be sufficient, the notary may always ask for more. So if you're not sure, or if you're notarizing, like doing general notary work, and the name on the document doesn't quite add up to the name on the ID, you can always ask for another form of ID where the name matches, and they should be able to produce that. If you don't feel confident in identifying the signer, then you can refuse to do the notarization. This is your commission, and you have to protect your commission at all costs. All right. So now let's talk about how this works into the loan signing space. Now, typically, when you accept a loan signing order, you will need to identify the borrower, because that's typical notary work. That's basic notary work. You have to identify whomever you're going to be notarizing for. Most of the time, the lender will also require a second piece of identification. There's usually a form, the Patriot Act form, that is in the package that I usually pull out and put on top so that I can ask for that information up front. Or whatever document that they have in the package that I need to write down their identification information, I put that document on top so that I get that done first before I even start signing anything else. So the secondary pieces of ID can be social security cards, organizational cards. It can be cards that are issued by the state of Florida. Like I've had a concealed weapon card used before. It can also be any one of the other forms of ID in this book. So it can be a driver's license and a passport. It can be a driver's license and a military ID. It could be a driver's license and a social security card. The secondary piece of ID is for the lender. That has nothing to do with your job as a notary to identify them correctly with the very first piece of ID. The first piece of ID has to conform to what the law is in the state of Florida. Some lenders will accept an expired ID as an acceptable form of identification. We do not. So if that's the only piece of ID they have, we cannot accept that. Now, if they have an expired driver's license, but they have an active passport, we can take the active passport as our primary identifying document And the driver's license can be the secondary piece for the lender. But most of the time, everybody wants unexpired IDs, okay? And another issue that loan signing agents run into are name changes. If the documents have one name, like for example, if someone gets married or divorced and they don't change their name on the ID, the name on the ID must match the name on the documents. Now, you can have more names on the ID and less on the documents, but it can't be the other way around. So for example, if my name was Mary Jane Doe, I can have on the documents Mary Doe. All right. Or I can have on the documents Mary Jane Doe. Okay. But I can't have on the documents Mary Doe Smith. Right? Because that's not what's on the ID. So if Mary got married and her last name is now Smith and she hyphenated her name and it's not on her ID, I cannot accept that piece of ID as identifying. Some of the title companies will try to back you into a corner in order to compromise your commission. I don't think it's intentional, but they just want the work done. And if they're not a notary, then they don't know the law. You know the law. We are public officials and we are expected to follow the law. So you will have to politely decline that order or that signing if you must, and let them know this is not according to the law. They're going to find someone else who doesn't know the law or who's not well versed, and they may do it. And hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully everybody knows the law, and the signing company is just educated on what the law is. So that's the quick lesson of identifications. Leave your comments and questions below. Again, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching my videos and subscribing to my channel. Speaking of which, make sure you do hit the subscribe button and like this video so that I can continue to make more for you. I'm going to do that anyway, whether you like it or not. But if you've been lurking through my videos and you've watched one or two, hit the subscribe button. You're interested. You want to know what I have to say. So until the next time, guys, I'll see you and enjoy. Have a good one. Bye-bye.